Okay, we'll get going. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of our Business Agility video podcast. So each week we spend 30 minutes exploring business technology topics for small business owners in Canada. Our topic today is everything you need to know about building a sustainable supply chain operation. So we're going to change it up a little bit today. Now our format is always interactive, so use the chat box if you're on the webinar official webinar thing. If you're on the Facebook live stream, then just send us some comments or questions in there. So we are interactive and we are going to wrap up in 30 minutes as we always do. But what we want to do today, like I say, we're going to change it up a little bit, and we're actually going to present some snippets from an upcoming presentation that we're going to be doing next week. So Samantha is going to be presenting at a supply chain conference next week. Of course, it's all virtual. It's called Supply Change Canada. So it's a presentation where we're going to discuss some of the challenges facing supply chain operations, some of the solutions that go along with that, as well as just what some of the next steps would be. So so Samantha's going to spend a bit of time presenting that, and then from there we're going to explore some topics deeper, and that's we're going to want you to send your comments and things every time. So we'll get going with that. We'll kick it off first with some introductions. So I'm Murray QUIBELL. I'm the president of Accurus Solutions. At Accurus, we're passionate about delivering business value every day through software. So we are ERP, or Enterprise Resource Planning software specialists. We specialize in Acumatica Cloud ERP, which is the fastest growing system on the market. And we think it's compelling to deliver value every day, to make you money every single day, and particularly in your supply chain operations. That's a little about me and Accurus. I'll flip it over to you, Samantha, for some quick introductions and get going right into our topic.
Yeah, you bet. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. Like Murray mentioned, I will be speaking at the Supply Chain Expo next Tuesday morning in the Applying Advanced Technologies to Supply Chain. So if you won't be attending the conference, then you're going to see the exact same presentation and get a really good look and feel as to the way we look at applying technology into supply chain and how it's really relevant for the small to mid-sized enterprises. So like Murray said, typically we sit here and have a discussion, but we are going to start with a quick 10-minute, 12-minute presentation that I'm going to be presenting next week. So without, I guess, further ado, we should get started, right?
Let's do it.
All right. So yeah, so hi everyone, and thanks for joining. So a quick introduction about myself is my name is Samantha NITON-DEFORGE, which you already may know, and I hold a double major in information systems and business administration, with my primary focus having been worked with the small and medium-sized businesses and really helping them leverage technology tools for them to achieve their operational goals. So the subject matter expertise that I primarily have lies with manufacturing, distribution, and e-commerce, and I have deployed hundreds of implementations as well as enhancements for clients throughout my career. So let's get started with a just quick overview of what the journey for today is going to look like for 10 minutes. So I'm going to start with some of the challenges that are faced in supply chain and technologies and what primarily causes those challenges. Then moving directly into what opportunities can look like, and then concluding with some next steps for a business who happens to have some of these challenges. And then I'll use some examples, references, some of our particular expertise and customer stories. And then of course, I'm going to start with an analogy to set some context. So starting with the analogy, the leaky roof and what it would take to resolve a leak in a building. Now I'll share what this unfortunately looks like as the reality in business. A business owner has a leaky roof. He needs a fix for it to prevent the water from coming in. So he's looking at the problem of water coming in, and his mentality is, you know what, just buy some duct tape and patch it up. It's a much more cost-effective solution. 6 months goes by, those holes gotten bigger, the drywall is starting to rot, and the owner says, honestly, I don't have time to contact or facilitate the roof and drywall repair shop, and it's really expensive, so just add some more duct tape. It's more cost-effective anyways. Unfortunately, a year later, the roof collapses, and now there's a huge hole in the ceiling where the owner says, honestly, it's not that bad, so let's just add more duct tape because it's a more cost-effective solution. Where in reality, somebody would say, well, why wouldn't you just fix the leak, replace the faulty shingles, and then patch up the drywall? But the response is always, no, the duct tape's fine and it's more cost-effective and it works well. A little odd to think, but unfortunately, this is the reality as far as business goes in many cases. In most, not all, but most. So what is the main challenge in supply chain? And in our opinion, it's really having one main source of the truth, because the thought initially isn't to look at the big picture. Supply chain is a series of links that need to be joined together, but that are more importantly part of an entire business chain. But supply chain is also not the be end and end all of a business. A couple of common truths are listed here on this slide, inventory, procurement, replenishment, production costing, the lack of truth in all of these topics. So let's break it down with an example. Here we have a manufacturing business that sells online and through wholesalers as well. They run an accounting solution and they have all these options listed here: ordering system, manufacturing systems. So they run an inventory system, and then they track a system and track inventory and manufacturing in another system, and then they have another system for ordering, and then they have another system, which is their commerce site. Now, this is a fairly common example, and it's, whether it's an actual official system or spreadsheets, I still like to think that spreadsheets are thought to be as a system, although incredibly limited, but they are still capturing data. So, we see these orders are placed a few ways, which create demand in the inventory system to procure inventory, to eventually manufacture, eventually ship, invoice, and then of course, maintain customer relationship long-term. The problem here is everything is an individual link that is being managed in probably spreadsheets, or in between is being managed in spreadsheets with the appropriate people. So shipping has no insight into what sales or manufacturing is doing, so they don't really know what's coming into the warehouse. Manufacturing doesn't have insight into upcoming sales, so they can't really let inventory know that they need to procure inventory because they have a demand to manufacture, and shipping and invoicing don't communicate either. So you may find yourself actually double shipping or actually forgetting to invoice because the papers or the emails happen to get lost. So the problem is the business needs some sort of communication, and it needs one thing: an integration. So consider these arrows one or form of an integration. Now, the integration doesn't have to be an application or a program, because it most certainly is, in most cases, a person who is manually entering data from one system into another. So why does this happen? And it's simple, and it's rare you find a business that looks at the big picture. They look for duct tape. Inventory problems, we need an inventory system. Accounting problems, we need an accounting system. Manufacturing, we need a manufacturing system, and so on and so forth. So why should a business look at the big picture if their problem is, let's say, an inventory? Let's take a closer look at basic inventory involvement in a manufacturing scenario, because we've used this example. Inventory touches on all of these tiles and more depending on business specifics. So everything from bringing in raw materials to manufacturing, then loading in finished goods, to the accounting behind it, and then actually, the last piece, displaying available quantities on the commerce site. This is why you have to look at a big picture, because if you have an inventory problem, you're actually touching almost every other aspect of the business in some way, shape, or form. Now, there are limitations if you don't look at the big picture. And the long term is it's expensive to manage integrations, whether they're people or an actual program. You have an incredibly high total cost of ownership on this, and a smaller, if any, return on investment at all, because the more duct tape you put on, the bigger the hole gets and the more water leaks until you add more duct tape. So there is no operational flow, and nobody has insight or visibility into anything going on as far as the business goes. So let's quickly talk about these integration costs. Starting with the bottom, people. Paying someone a salary to enter data from one system to another, let's say 40 to 65K a year. That's a cost, so quantify it. But the actual other costs associated with integrations is you're actually developing software or program to make two systems talk to each other. So now you have IT costs, servers, development, and then the maintenance of these integrations. And the maintenance is what's going to cost you a lot, because these connectors break. And it's because of Windows, SQL, or security updates. And it's not a matter of if they will break, it is a matter of when. These updates do hit hard. They don't mean to, but they do tend to break, different connectors. And it's a very common thing to see, especially with private cloud or on-premise deployments. So next thing you know, your commerce site is down, or manufacturing isn't getting the latest production orders, or inventory stopped syncing. So now you've resulted in missed opportunity costs, which is a whole other cost, because your customers can actually go elsewhere. because you're not able to fulfill orders in time. You don't, let's say, have even a commerce site, so customers can't place orders after hours. And there's a lot of missed opportunity costs because you've decided to centralize the business as individual links. So let's take a look at what advanced technology that is consolidated looks like. This is what it looks like. And we're going to start from the bottom. Happy customers. Because if you are successfully fulfilling and empowering your customers to be self-sufficient by leveraging things like e-commerce or customer portals, that way your customers can place orders after hours if you aren't selling online, which really nowadays you should due to COVID, and the statistics behind selling online are just mind-blowing nowadays. Now, keep in mind as well, though, you do not have to sell jeans, candles, or any sort of consumer trinket to sell online. We have B2B based customers that are industrial manufacturers that use what we call a customer portal. They have a similar customer base. It's reoccurring orders for the most part, where customers have access to their system where they can see order history, see outstanding balances, see inventory stock levels by warehouse, and then also directly place orders through this solution, making them self-sufficient, but also eliminating that "can I get a copy of my last invoice" conversation, which I know a lot of distributors and manufacturers hate. Now, second, the meat and potatoes supply chain. With advanced technology, you have accurate data now, which results in the ability to leverage automation as far as replenishment goes, scheduling tasks out go, because now you've built a solid foundation and you're able to model predictive analytics based on forecasts or even history, because everything is centralized and accurate in one specific location. Now at the top, we have the mothership, what we consider the enterprise resource planning solution, and whatever that system might look like, where everybody has a 360-degree view of their day. If you're the CEO, you see incoming or outstanding AR, top selling items, what your manufacturing or projects are looking at. You have that 360-degree view. But if you're, and the reason is because your operations are now streamlined. You have these efficiencies and your system is naturally doing tedious work and tedious tasks for you and giving you the recommendations you need. It no longer takes you 8 hours to generate an accounts receivable report or a project report. And yes, that is actually something that I've heard a prospective buyer say. But let's talk about this visibility. Speaking of view, so here we just see a generic customer dashboard. Now, and this is company-wide, but if I typed in a customer code here, I can see this customer-specific data against all the relevant dashboards. But having the ability to log in and see this right away makes your business efficient, because you're naturally not having to look or search for these problems. And if you see a tile that's red, obviously something's wrong. If you see it in green, then that's great. Now, all these tiles are also drillable. So the second you drill into this tile, all the information pops up at you. It's about that accessibility feature. But let's talk about something a little bit more relevant, directly affiliated with supply chain. Here we have a shipping clerk's dashboard. So shipping comes in, the warehousing staff, they come into the warehouse in the morning and they see a list of their orders that are needing to be shipped. At which point they can go and pick and pack the orders and eventually confirm the shipment and then send it out the door. Once the actual order has been confirmed, it will disappear off this dashboard. But now we look at an AR clerk's dashboard and we see that they have an order to invoice. So now you're solving the problem of missing invoicing or duplicate invoicing, because you've actually centralized that with a nice operational business flow. So the data should come to each and every person. Fix the leak, fix the roof, and then the drywall. And then everyone's got a nice solid roof above them. Now, a common misconception is that ERP solutions are simply an audit trail, and nowadays they're simply not. And I've listed a couple of things here, and I emphasize the word some of the things that an ERP solution is capable of doing. And oftentimes the functionality is standard. So all of this is, for instance, feasible in majority of modern day ERP solutions. And a lot of the things that surprise users nowadays is CRM, that's one big one. Engineering change control is another one. Warehouse scanning solutions, the ability to scan inventory, asset management, projects. Projects is the big one, because that's probably the biggest thing that surprises a lot of people. And then of course, things like as simple as timesheets, because an ERP can handle this. So you don't need to go buy additional little products that can fulfill those needs with those duct tapes. So let's say you have a problem. Let's say you've listened to me talk for the last few minutes and you say, okay, you know what, I have some of these challenges. So what do you do now? And there's a few things that you need to consider before an ERP solution. These are some of the things: is streamline your business into something centralized and focus on the bigger picture. Spreadsheets being the big one. If you run even one spreadsheet, but that spreadsheet happens to be an inventory sheet or bills of materials sheet, it's time to evaluate. In addition to this, multiple systems, huge no-no and very expensive. You're hiring for additional data entry people. You're growing, you're not in the cloud, and it takes a very long time for you to generate any sort of information or report. Now, these are some of the signs, but there are a few things that you need to do first before you even call a software demo. Document your pains and your processes and your procedures that you currently have and quantify the cost of ownership on this. And this is incredibly important because it'll help dilute your software and understand better what you should be looking at as far as pricing goes. But always look at the big picture. And once you're ready, reach out to some software companies and be honest, be transparent, and partner with them. They are there to help you. The more information you share with them, the better solution you'll see, and then there won't be any surprises long term. And I can't stress transparency enough because you need to find the right solution. The things to also avoid, but take note of, is always avoid bias. Now, I've worked with this, in the past, or I know someone who uses this system. Always go into every single business solution selection process with an open mind and try to avoid starting with product demos. Because if you don't have documented requirements, you'll simply be shown the wow features of any system. And then if you aren't transparent, you might be shown a Vespa or a bike when in reality, your business actually requires a cargo ship. And then you'll just make the self-made assumption that a system can't handle certain things, but it's really on you because you didn't provide that level of detail. So always provide as much information as you can. Now, work as a team internally and avoid accounting driving the decision. Accounting will always be achieved in any ERP solution you select. It's standardized, there's some structure behind it, but keep in mind always that operations drives accounting. There is no accounting without operations. There's nothing to account on. So avoid having accounting decide on an operational based decision. We'll certainly have them involved, but work together. Also, just a red flag in the buying process, if you're facing substantial price discounts pretty much off the hop, chances are this is a predatory vendor looking at, just to close a sale. So if you happen to get an 85% discount off the hop, remember two things. One, you're not that special. Sorry, but you're also going to have to pay the subscription in full after the year log is over. But naturally, stay optimistic on price because you've done your due diligence and you've already quantified your initial total cost of ownership of your integrations and your systems. So you have a realistic number of what those spreadsheets and multiple systems are already costing you. Now, just a quick recap of the last, 10 or 15 minutes or so of a few things I want to point out is about these challenges. Always think big picture, and this is what it comes down to supply chain. Avoid having multiple systems. Think about spreadsheets and their costs, and then the integration costs, not only with software, but also with people and what that is costing your business. Some of the solutions you want to look at is consolidating your advanced technology, using the correct technology. You can reference one of our previous podcasts for that, but the big picture mentality and working with accounting, not just accounting. This is an operational based decision. And then obviously, as far as next steps go, make sure you document your processes and your pains, quantify the cost of ownership, and never start with a product demo because you're not going to see what you need. And it's incredibly hard for a software vendor to actually sit there and guess what you need. So always be as transparent and naturally avoid bias. So that's my presentation, Murray. What do you think?
I think that's great. Thank you. I have so I'm just keeping track, but we have 4 questions that have come in here, and we're going to try to get to all the questions here. We've got in the 11 minutes that we have here, but no, I think that's good. I think here I'm just going to run in through the question. Actually, the most interesting one is the last one that came in, so I'll go with that first. So this one is I love the Vespa and cargo ship example, and that would work in reverse too. Can you share an example of companies that may have purchased a cargo ship when they actually may only need a car? So you want to take that one?
I mean, that kind of comes back to something we talked about even a few weeks ago, right? There's a few businesses that, yes, and the other analogy sometimes I use too is you've bought a Ferrari, but you're only using the radio. right? And that decision particularly actually came because of a biased opinion. In two different instances. One, because one company decided that they were big enough for a large solution, the SAP S/4HANA solution, where they only had, I think, 1,300 employees. Now, they're a large company, but it was pretty overkill. They're still into their implementation. They've spent millions of dollars on it already over the last 3 years. So that was a big one. And then the other one was a company that had 38 employees and bought an actual tier 1 enterprise solution because the CFO, unfortunately, has actually had experience with, or had somebody say that they are using Infor, and they bought Infor, and it was a really, really big system. And again, they're still not live, and they don't even have the radio working.
Yeah, and I can maybe just share a couple examples as well too. And we see this all the times, particularly with maybe large companies that they might be running a tier 1 system such as SAP at the corporate office, but oftentimes they might be setting up a branch office or maybe even new facility. And what they're looking at is that, well, we'll just set up another instance of that system or try to integrate it. But oftentimes what we find is that it may take a year and a half or 2 to get up and running. And again, that really hasn't solved anything. So what you've had to do is probably do that whole business unit on spreadsheets or some other systems in the meantime. Again, I think the key thing is look at your business requirements and then determine, do you really need, kind of QuickBooks or SAP, or maybe it's something in between. And that's, of course, something.
Well, and yeah, I think that for the SAP side of things, right, with that being my bread and butter for so many years and having worked in there, if you did have an enterprise level company, typically the course of action they'll do is they'll deploy the mid-market solution from the SAP side. So nowadays, by design, which I know SAP is still trying to go gung-ho on, or the Business One solution, right? So they do have a solution for the mid-market, and that's really the way and the avenues that they would take. But I think it's a really good marketing strategy for them too, because if you're buying enterprise, you're naturally going to have a lot of subsidiaries that actually require a mid-market solution. They're not going to run, let's say, S/4HANA or ECC or whatever it might be. But the thing is SAP's marketed it in the sense that, yeah, we have these enterprise solutions, and then we have these mid-market branch solutions you can plug in, right? And then eventually you grow out of that solution, and then it just becomes, it's just like almost like, I don't know, it's like the plague. Can't get rid of it.
I have one comment, another comment that's come in, and it's just simply buying SAP for SME. And I think the comment there is, and let's not, we certainly don't want to slag SAP. I think it's a great product and has different products, to fit different markets. I think most of us think of SAP being kind of an enterprise-wide product that is, kind of meant for those tier 1 companies that really do need to spend, millions, if not tens of millions of dollars on that kind of system. And it does have such reach that you need it. But I think the idea is that it's excellent if that's the right fit. But if you're a small and medium-sized company, it's surely not the place you want to start. A couple other, and sorry, we're running out of time here, but I want.
Oh, wow, so fast already.
Yeah, there's another question. This is the first one that came in, and so Samantha, you mentioned customer self-service. Do you mean e-commerce? I think you probably addressed that, but there's probably a point there to maybe drill down into a little bit further.
Yeah, and I think that, definitely customer self-service, giving your customers the option. So yes, that can most certainly include, e-commerce solutions, whether it's a Shopify integration or a BigCommerce integration, or even for, customer portal, like I mentioned, right? Having customers have the ability to go and reference their order history, applying, let's say, account credits, seeing what their outstanding balances are, right? That's sort of that self-sufficiency, instead of a customer having to pick up a phone and call you and then be able to say, oh, well, actually, I need a copy of my invoice. Where a customer, instead of having to call nowadays, a lot of people don't like being on the phone. They can just log into their aspect of the portal, see the even order history, or even see their balance. Or if something that they liked in their last order, they can place the exact same order again, right? So that's the kind of self-sufficiency that, you can enable your customers to have.
Yeah. And I think I'll just give a couple comments on that, is because I think there are customer portals that can be more, I might call them more industrial. So they are meant to do some of the things that you just mentioned around, looking at last orders, repeating last orders, and be more of an order entry system. I do think the average user out there today is they are used to using e-commerce sites. We are used to buying stuff online, and it's just the natural way that we're shopping, particularly in this more recent time that we have it's not as easy to get out there in stores and malls and buy stuff that we might have. But again, we're seeing that extend to the industrial user. So the natural buying that you might do at home for consumer goods, the research that you do, going shopping online is exactly what we're seeing happen in industrial situations that we didn't see happen before. So our point would be, if you're not doing that, if you're not becoming if someone is searching for goods, even industrial goods, and they're not finding you, they're going to find your competitors. So you got to be in front of that so you don't get run over by a competitor.
Yeah.
One other question, there's two more here. What about shipping and logistics solutions? Because I think you covered a lot of, so I mean, just give context what I think the question is. So Sam, you talked about ERP and stuff and talked about some of the guts, including accounting. But what about shipping and logistics? Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I guess I could. I mean, with supply chain, there's so many aspects that I have to, centralize into a 10 to 12 minute presentation, which I still have to bring it down a little bit. But when it comes to shipping and logistics, I think a lot of the problems in supply chain reside in double shipping for sure. We've seen that a lot of times. Also missing invoices, lost confirmed shipment documents, but of course also rate shopping. And rate shopping sort of seems to become an incredibly tedious task for so many businesses if they're not running something a little bit more advanced as far as, technology goes. Because let's say you're running an actual ERP, everything's top notch. The reality would be that you're tracking these units of measure, the packaging information associated with it, and then you're able to go shop for rates. Well, naturally, you'll see a business having to actually go in and type in the information, the packaging information, maybe manually shopping through rates in a different portal, looking for those rates, getting the right rates, and then consolidating it, right? I even know of a business here in Airdrie that actually has a little bit of an e-commerce site, but then they shop for rates when the time comes. So it doesn't even allow the customer to actually pick the option to shop for a rate. They just kind of highball it and they just kind of let them know what the rate is after the fact, after they've checked out, if that makes sense. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's good to have that integrated. For sure.
Yeah, it's not integrated, right? So that's a huge gap, because now the customer says, oh, I bought this thing and it cost me $500. And then it turns out 3 days later when they go to process the shipment, that shipping is an extra $200 or so, or whatever it might be, right? So I think that the solution for shipping would definitely be finding a way to integrate a nice carrier integration. We've done it, Maria. We have several customers that are actually using this, but where we've integrated the shipping carrier solution.
Yeah,
right?
it does go more than just shopping rates and things like that. It's actually, if we can maximize the efficiency of the supply chain. So that kind of gets into a little bit of the logistics, and so track containers as they're coming from an overseas supplier and things like that, and just getting very tight around when you expect those goods to arrive so that you can communicate better with your customer. So those are all really key points. Now we have 2 minutes left. A question or a comment that just came in, and this might take a while to answer. How are you, and in brackets, customer, defining value? Now, I'm not sure exactly the context there, and that probably warrants a larger call. But what I might answer to that is, because I mentioned right at the get-go that this software, the kinds of solutions we're doing, should make money for you as the customer, as the business every day. So how I might define that is that, can you sell more goods to a customer? Can you sell an additional item? So again, that hints to the e-commerce site that may say customers buying product A often also may look at B and C. So can you sell an additional product? There's one. Can you make more money on that additional sale? So for example, if you have a tight view into your margins, you have shipping fully integrated, you know if you're making 22 points or if you're making 4 points on that. So again, real-time visibility into that. Other areas of visibility, can you get more customers or sell, so even get more customers? I said more items to the same customer, but can you get more customers? And for us, it's, can we leverage the data we have, and even reaching into things like artificial intelligence or AI? Can we start to scour the web for buying patterns for people that might help you identify customers? Those are some kind of advanced things that I think we can do without too much. It's not a stretch. This is not pie in the sky stuff, but you do have to start with the fundamentals. That's why I say, I think we do. We start with the fundamentals and then you build from there as a part of a strategy of continuous improvement.
I think return on investment is just as big though too, because if you can't
yeah.
quantify a good return on investment with the solution that you're buying, then you're probably not looking at the right business solution, or whether it's too big or it's too small and it doesn't it's got to just be like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's got to be just right. The porridge is just right. So I think that's really the bottom line when it comes to identifying the value as a customer.
Yeah, obviously the look at the cost benefit, and absolutely there's lots of different metrics we have around total cost of ownership, things like that. Mm-hmm. We do have to wrap up. The last question is, do we handle warehouse scanners? Absolutely, yeah. So again, that's kind of another, once we get the guts in place, then how do we automate? And so there's lots of ways that we can automate, and through wireless scanners is a really easy one in a warehouse.
Get into IoT devices and wireless picking.
Absolutely.
That's even cooler. Yeah. But again, like Murray said, you got to walk before you run too.
Yeah. So. All right. Sorry, we got to wrap up. Any closing thoughts in 3 minutes or less, Sam?
You know what? I think, thanks for joining us today. And if you can attend the Supply Chain Expo, I think it's going to be a great turnout this year. And like I said, you'll probably see the same presentation you just did, maybe a little bit different. My closing thoughts are always look at the big picture as far as supply chain management goes. And don't just focus on the leak and the water coming in. Focus on replacing the drywall, the shingles, and the leak at the same time.
Perfect. And I always end with continuous improvement. This is not a point in time. It's always something you need to look at and figure out ways to enhance through technology of all kinds and enhance processes. So thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.